Hey everyone, welcome to another installment of Harry Potter Theory. In today's video, we're going to be discussing Newt Scamander, magical, fantastic beasts, and his trusty suitcase. More specifically, we're going to be diving into one very big question. How does Newt Scamander's suitcase work? And just how big are the environments within it? Let's jump in. Now, just last week I was rewatching Fantastic Beasts 1 and 2, prepping myself and making sure that I was on top of all of the details of the prequel films in advance of the release of the third installment, coming April 15th, Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore. The films, which I've seen just a few times at this point, a stark difference between the number of times I've seen the Harry Potter films, probably hundreds there, were more or less just as I had remembered. However, there was one lingering question in the back of my mind. Just how on earth does Newt Scamander's suitcase work? And, more importantly, just how many magical creatures are housed within it? Which creatures can be found inside? We're first introduced to Newt Scamander in the new Fantastic Beasts films, and though much of Fantastic Beasts takes place in the US so far, Newt is actually originally from the UK, and this of course means that he attended Hogwarts. In his later life, Newt became a famed magizoologist and authored Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, a book which outlines the study of magical creatures. I have visited lairs, burrows, and nests across 5 continents, observed the curious habits of magical beasts in 100 countries, witnessed their powers, gained their trust, and, on occasion, beaten them off with my travelling kettle. Newt's profession requires him to intensely study all manners of creatures, and sometimes this involves relocating them, or simply preserving them in order to ensure that they don't go extinct. This makes Newt's suitcase even more important. Now, I'm more than aware of the fact that the Harry Potter universe is filled with magic. We've seen people splitting their soul apart, transforming into different animals, reading people's minds, and even producing giant fiery dragons out of the tip of their wands. We've even seen people time travel. But when I first saw the capabilities of Newt Scamander's suitcase, a presumably 30-inch by 18-inch rectangular piece of luggage housing what appears to be an entire other world, I was awestruck. I don't know about you guys, but to me, this level of magic seems like it's on another level, and though witches and wizards within Harry Potter were impressed with Newt's suitcase, none seemed to be too taken aback. This got me thinking, just how does Newt's magical suitcase work? Is this simple magic, or magic too complicated for most to comprehend? Well, as it turns out, similar magic has been used in Harry Potter before. If you think back, you may recall that Arthur Weasley placed a similar spell on the flying Ford Anglia, allowing the small car to accommodate all of the Weasleys and their luggage. Other notable instances include Mundungus Fletcher casting this same spell on a car in 1995, and Hermione placing this spell on her handbag before going off and hunting Horcruxes. Well, it's no coincidence that these spells displayed similar properties, as these are in fact examples of the same spell that Newt used, a little spell known as the Extension Charm, or Undetectable Extension Charm. However, what I really want to highlight here is that Newt's was on an entirely different level. Extension charms are widely considered to be a very sophisticated branch of magic that allow witches and wizards to manipulate space. The charm essentially expands an object's internal dimensions while retaining its external appearance, all while reducing the total weight. In fact, extension charms are considered to be such an advanced form of magic that they are subject to strict control through the Ministry of Magic, mainly due to the spell's potential to breach the International Statute of Secrecy. There was even a law put in place that forbade private use, with permissible use reserved for objects that had been individually approved for manufacture. What Newt possessed with his suitcase was perhaps the most extreme example of the charm's power in existence, as it housed entire ecosystems for the magical beasts who lived within. With our present level of knowledge, we know there to be 15 different magical habitats within Newt's suitcase, housing 23 different magical creatures. If you thought Hermione's handbag was impressive, then you should now realize just how impressive Newt's suitcase is, speaking to his ability as a wizard. Also, now that you know how Newt's suitcase works, let's dive into the ecosystems inside. What are these 15 different habitats? What are these creatures? Let's dive in further. Starting things off, let's take a look at, in no particular order, the 15 habitats that Newt created in order to accommodate his magical beasts. Later, we'll look at the creatures. These different habitats were created via atmospheric charms within the magical chest. Charms upon charms. 15. Erumpent habitat. The erumpent habitat resembles a grassland intended to be reminiscent of the African savanna. This environment was dry with pale grass and wide-brimmed trees which offered shade from the sun. 14. Floating tree habitat. This habitat contains a small floating piece of earth covered in golden leaves and a cluster of small trees sprouting upwards. This habitat was positioned just below the bamboo forest. Number 13. Noondu habitat. This habitat is a rainforest containing many trees and a large rocky outcrop. This habitat leads into the mooncalf habitat. 12. Mooncalf habitat. Similar to the Noondu habitat, the mooncalf habitat is a small rocky mountain with grass and trees that grow on it. 11. Thunderbird habitat. The Thunderbird habitat contains a large rock formation surrounded by desert and is intended to be reminiscent of the deserts of Arizona. 10. Grindylow habitat. The Grindylow habitat contained a large square of water that the Grindylows inhabited. The creatures were able to float around outside of the water in large bubbles of water. 9. Bamboo forest habitat. The bamboo forest habitat contained tall trees which supported nests for bird-like creatures. Just outside of the tall bamboo lay a series of stone constructions, likely home to giant dung beetles. 8. Zuwu habitat. Newt created a habitat for the Zuwu after rescuing it from the streets of Paris. This habitat appeared to be quite similar to the aforementioned bamboo forest habitat. However, there is always the possibility that Newt simply expanded the existing habitat to accommodate the large Zuwu. 7. Lightbulb habitat. The lightbulb habitat floats high above the other environments, and it's here that Newt keeps several empty light bulbs where young glowworms reside. 6. Chinese pagoda. This habitat, which at first glance resembles a miniature Chinese pagoda, transforms into a magically expanded cave upon entry, likely using a charm much like the Suitcase's own. 5. Earthen habitat. This habitat possessed a large floating earthen area with a thick tree on top. Roots hung down from underneath which touched the floor. This area overlooked the floating tree habitat, the bamboo forest, and Newt's shed. 4. Graphorn habitat. This habitat was a flat, grey area that led into a tall rock formation. This habitat was positioned behind the bamboo forest and Newt's shed. Just outside of this habitat was a perch for a fwooper. 3. Snowy habitat. This blank, snowy habitat was home to a floating obscurus. This habitat was supposed to be hard to discover as it was contained by large curtains. It's possible that other creatures lived in this habitat, although Newt may have wanted to keep the obscurus on its own. 2. Water habitat. In Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald, we see Newt diving into the water and tending to the kelpie. He dives in closer to his living area and resurfaces in a habitat that resembles a Scottish loch. Presumably, this environment is for all water-based beasts. 1. Frozen habitat. In the films, Newt keeps a frozen Ashwinder egg, so it's possible that there is some kind of a frozen environment within his suitcase. It's always possible that this egg could have lived in the snowy habitat, but I don't suspect that Newt would have placed any other creatures near the obscurus. And that's about it for the habitats, at least the ones that we know about so far. It's amazing what Newt's been able to produce, placing extension charms upon atmospheric charms. Now let's get into the creatures that we know to live in Newt's suitcase. Some of them were dead giveaways by the habitat names. 1. Auguries. The augury, also known as the Irish phoenix, was a thin and mournful-looking magical bird, somewhat like a small, underfed vulture in appearance, with greenish-black feathers and a sharp beak. 2. Billywigs. The billywig was a magical insect native to Australia. It was rated XXX and was around half an inch long and of vivid sapphire blue color. The speed of the billywig may be why it was rarely noticed by muggles. and wizards and witches often only spotted it once they had been stung. 3. Bowtruckles. The bowtruckle was a hand-sized, insect-eating, tree-dwelling magical beast with long, sharp fingers, 2 on each hand, brown eyes, and a general appearance of a flat-faced stick figure made out of bark and twigs, which served well as camouflage in its natural habitat. 4. Demiguise. The demiguise was a peaceful, herbivorous magical beast that could make itself invisible and to tell the future, which made it very hard to catch. 5. Doxies. The doxie, sometimes referred to as the biting fairy, was a small fairy-like magical beast, sometimes mistaken for a fairy. The doxie was covered in coarse black hair and had an additional set of arms and legs. Doxies had shiny beetle-like wings and a double row of sharp teeth. 6. Diricawl. The diricawl, known to muggles as the dodo, was a plump, fluffy-feathered and flightless magical bird, native to the island of Mauritius in the Indian Ocean. While muggles believed this bird to be extinct, in reality, it existed and had the ability to disappear and reappear elsewhere as a means of escaping danger, similar to apparition. 7. Erumpent. The erumpent is a large grey African beast of great power. Weighing up to a ton, the erumpent may be mistaken for a rhinoceros at a distance. It has a thick hide that repels most charms and curses, a large, sharp horn upon its nose, and a long, rope-like tail. 8. Fwooper. The fwooper was a magical African bird with brightly coloured feathers, which could include orange, pink, lime green, and yellow. Listening to the fwooper's high-pitched, twittering song would drive the listener insane. 9. Giant dung beetles. The giant dung beetle was a large magical insect. It is mostly unknown how it was different from its non-magical cousin. However, it was significantly larger and could use the 3 large horns on its head to carry balls of dung instead of rolling them, an action which it could still perform. 10. Glowbugs. Glowbugs were small, luminescent, magical worms. 11. Graphorns. The graphorn is found in mountainous European regions. Large and greyish-purple with a humped back, the graphorn has 2 very long, sharp horns, walks on large, 4-thumbed feet, and has an extremely aggressive nature. 12. Grindylows. A grindylow was a small, horned, pale green-skinned water demon native to Great Britain and Ireland. 13. Lucrota. The Lucrota resembled a large moose with very long, jagged antlers and an impossibly huge mouth in respect to its head and face. It was capable of stretching its jaws wide enough that a full-grown human could fit inside. 14. Marmite. The name of this one is hilarious. The Marmite was a moderate-sized, squid-like magical beast. Described as a cross between a dust mite and squid, it has a transparent, bioluminescent body and long, trailing tentacles. 15. Mooncalves. The mooncalf was a shy magical beast that only came out of its burrow during a full moon. The mooncalf had smooth, pale grey skin and 4 spindly legs that ended in large, flat, webbed feet. The mooncalf also had a very long neck and bulging blue eyes that sat on the top of its head. 16. Murtlaps. The murtlap was a magical marine beast resembling a rat with a growth on its back, resembling a sea anemone, found on the coastal areas of Britain. 17. Niffler. The niffler was a magical beast with a long snout and a coat of black, fluffy fur. They were attracted to shiny things, which made them wonderful for locating treasure, but that also meant that they could wreak havoc if kept, or let loose, indoors. 18. Noondu. The Noondu was a large East African magical beast that resembled a leopard. It moved silently, despite its gigantic size, and was considered by some to be the most dangerous creature alive. 19. Okamis. The Okami is found in the Far East and India, a plumed, 2-legged winged creature with a serpentine body. It feeds mainly on rats and birds, though has been known to carry off monkeys. The Okami is aggressive to all who approach it, particularly in defense of its eggs. 20. Runespores. The runespore was a magical 3-headed snake native to the African country of Burkina Faso. Runespores were commonly 6 to 7 feet long, an exception being the one held by Newt Scamander that was gigantic in size, with orange and black stripes. 21. Swooping Evil. The Swooping Evil was a blue and green winged dark magical beast. It appeared similar to an extremely large butterfly, but with a wolf-like skull in place of an ordinary head. When it was not flying with its spiked wings, the swooping evil shrunk into a green, spiny cocoon. 22. Thunderbird. The Thunderbird was a large, magical avian beast native to North America, and most commonly found in Arizona in the southwestern United States. A close relative of the phoenix, the Thunderbird could create storms as it flew and was highly sensitive to danger. 23. Zuwu. The Zuwu was a powerful magical beast native to China. It was a monstrously large, feline-like beast with a striped body, scraggly mane, 4 fangs that curled out of its mouth, long sharp claws, and a disproportionately long, ruffled, multicolored tail. And that's it for this video. I hope you learned a little bit about Newt's case, how it works, what's inside, and what creatures you can find within. If you enjoy the content, please be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, remember, it does not do to dwell on dreams and forget to live.